Hey there, Andrea here with Crafts on the Move. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to make your own A2 card bases, which is one of the foundation skills in making cards. And I'm also going to give you a pro tip that I have not seen in any of the videos, and I personally feel it is actually essential to making a really nice A2 card base. So why don't you join me in the classroom and we'll get started. Welcome to Crafts on the Move classroom. Again, this is Andrea, and I am going to be sharing how we cut and score our A2 card bases for our card kits. One of the important factors when making your card base is starting with a cardstock heavy enough to support your card panel. We use a privately sourced 110-pound white cardstock. And I'm going to walk you through how to make two different cuts on your paper. So you have two different ways to make your A2 card base. One will be a 5.5 by 8.5, and the second one is going to be 4.25 by 11. You will need for this activity 2 sheets of 8.5 by 11 cardstock. You're also going to want a paper trimmer for this project. The larger paper trimmers are better because you will be using the 11-inch side, and on some of the guillotine cutters, the measurements on the guillotine cutters aren't big enough. You're also going to want a scoreboard. We will be using the Spellbinders multi-purpose scoring board, which also has underneath instructions to make envelopes and a bone folder. And those slide in and out. So these are the tools you'll need. I will also be using a stylus tool. So this is the stylus tool from We Are Memory Makers, or We Are Makers. I have a little piece of washi tape on the end that I use the most from that set. So this is the stylus I use the most when I'm scoring my card bases. And I will also be using a honeybee Teflon bone folder. This is optional, and there are some benefits to using a Teflon bone folder. One of them is that when you go to burnish or apply pressure to your crease, this will not leave white streaks. Sometimes when you're applying pressure with your bone folder on your white cardstock, it will actually streak and you'll see the markings of the bone folder. With the Teflon, that is avoided. One last thing I wanted to go over is some of the larger paper trimmers come with two blades. One is a cutting blade and one is a scoring blade. Because I use my scoreboard, I don't use the blade on my paper trimmer. For Spellbinders, the scoring blade is white, and it does come with the paper trimmer, so you do get both of the blades in your paper trimmer. For beginners who are looking to save a little bit of money, your best option is to go ahead and use your paper trimmer for your scoring. So what you want to do, the pro tip that I mentioned that I have not seen anybody actually address, is that not all 8.5 by 11 paper is exactly 8.5 by 11. So I recommend measuring your cardstock from your manufacturer before you start cutting and scoring your paper. If the measurements are slightly off and you're using A2 card panel to cover your card base, sometimes you'll see the overhang of the card base. And so it's just easier if you go ahead and start with the proper sized A2 card base. The other thing I'm going to recommend is, and this has happened before, is the color and the lot of the paper can also change on the size. So for example, Sometimes you can buy 4 colors from the same manufacturer, but one of those packs of paper might be slightly larger. So you definitely, whenever you break into a pack of cardstock, you want to just check the measurement of that cardstock and see what is happening with that actual pack of paper. Every once in a while, they'll be slightly under or slightly over. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our paper trimmer and I'm going to trim these down. And I think one of them I already trimmed down. I did one cut already. I'm going to open up the arm on my Spellbinder paper trimmer. Depending on your paper trimmer will depend on what features you have on your paper trimmer. And with the 8.5 width of the paper at the top ruler, I'm going to line this edge. I want to line my left edge to 8.5, and then I'm going to place the, I don't know what this is called. I guess it's like the ruler part of the paper trimmer down, and I'm going to just go ahead and slide my blade up or down depending on where you're at on your cutting blade. And you're going to see here there was a little bit of an edge. So this paper was about a 1/16 inch longer or wider than 8.5 by 11. Now I'm just going to rotate it 90 degrees. So I have the 11 at the top of the ruler. And I'm going to bring the very left edge to the 11-inch mark on the ruler. I'm going to drop this bar down and I'm going to bring my blade to me, just depending on where you're at, where your blade is at. And here you can see there is actually another even wider piece on the length. So this is paper, does not come exactly measured at 8.5 by 11. So I'm going to do the same, cut the same measurements on the second sheet. And this might be the one I already pre-cut. I think I did the 11, so we'll see. No, I did not. Okay, so now both my 8.5 inch by 11 both my 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper are ready for the scoring and cutting of the card bases. So at this time, I'm going to put the paper trimmer away. And there's 2 ways you can do this. You can cut these now and then score them individually, or you can just score them once and then it'll take up a couple seconds less of your time so that you're not doing it individually. And so I'm going to bring my scoreboard in, and I have my stylus with the side that I use. This is the ball I prefer. And for I'm going to call this the landscape card. For the landscape card, I want my crease at 4 1/4. And so what you're going to do is you're going to take the 8.5 at the top of the ruler, and you're going to find your 4 1/4 mark on your cutting board. So right here, it's 4 1/4. I'm going to put my stylus right in the groove, and I'm going to carefully drag the stylus down towards me in that notch. So there's a notch in the board, and you're going to see there is a line right in the center here, and that is my crease for my card. So this sheet of paper will get me 2 card bases that are landscape. So I'm going to set this aside, and now we're going to score the card bases for this type of A2 card. For this, you're going to want to put your paper with the 11-inch up on the ruler. So you're going to have a longer length on this one. And for this type of card, you're going to want to score at 5.5, which is essentially half the sheet of paper. So we're scoring the 11 in half, which is 5.5. And again, you put your straight edge at the 11-inch, you find the 5.5 tick mark, you place your stylus in the notch, and you're going to bring it down. Now I'm going to do it with a bone folder so that you can see the difference. So I'm going to take the bone folder at 5.5. I'm going to bring the bone folder towards me in that notch. Now my bone folder is a little bit rounded. It's a little bit thicker, which is why I like the stylus. I feel like the stylus just creases it a little bit more. That is a personal preference, but typically your scoreboards that you buy will come with a bone folder like this one does here at the bottom. So you can just pop this out and use this instead. And then pop it right back. So we'll keep those together so that we know what we're doing. And now what you want to do is grab your paper trimmer again. And because we know we want the paper cut at 11 by 4.25, we have the score line here at 5.5. We want to have the paper at 8.5, and we're going to cut this in half widthwise. So this is going to be cut at 4.25. So I'm going to open up that bar. I don't really need to because I'm only going to 4.25. And I'm going to take the left edge and line it up at the 4.25 mark on my ruler. I'm going to close this down, and I'm going to bring my blade's going to go up towards the top. I'm going to put these together, and now I have these two card bases. So I'm going to set that aside, and I'm going to bring in the other sheet of paper for the landscape card. And for this card, we want to go ahead and cut perpendicular, and we're going to cut at 5.5 because we're cutting the 11.5 paper, or excuse me, the 11-inch paper in half. So you're going to take your paper and you want the left edge lined up with the 5.5 mark on the ruler. I'm going to close this panel here, and I'm going to bring the blade right to me straight down. And now you have two 5.5 by 8.5 card panels. Excuse me, card bases. The next thing to do, you can store them this way. Some people store them this way, but when you're ready to go ahead and start making your card, you're going to want to fold the paper over where it creases. It naturally creases. And then take your bone folder, and I try and just make sure that my paper is even on all three sides. And then you're going to apply pressure with your bone folder right on that crease. And I usually do it once or twice. And now I have my card base. And you can have the card open to the left if you want it on the portrait, or if you want it on landscape, you can have it open to the top. And that is how you make that style A2 card base. And then for this card base, same process. You're just going to, where the creases, you're going to see it's going to want to naturally fold. And then again, and so my blade is super sharp. So you're going to see there's a really sharp edge here. What you can do if you have that is you can take your bone folder and just press down along the edge, and that will soften that cut mark. That happens a lot when you have a brand new blade because it's nice and sharp. And so it just flattens it right down, and now you can't feel that cut edge. I still have some up here, so I'm going to just press down here. This actually makes a huge difference. Just makes the card look more finished. So again, you're going to crease where that score line is. Get your edges lined up. It helps to have them lined up before you score. Take your bone folder and apply pressure and crease that line. And I think I see a little bit more. of that cutting edge. So I'm just going to, sometimes you have to add a little bit more pressure. And now you have this like a portrait style card base, but again, this one you can rotate this way as well. And so you can still use it as a landscape. It's just, it opens to the left instead of being on the top. And there is that card. The key takeaways for making your card bases: have a nice sturdy piece of cardstock. Make sure it is measured at 8.5 by 11 before you start cutting and scoring to make your card bases. And have the right tools to do the scoring and the paper cutting. It will make your cards look more professional. And you can also do the same process with colored cardstock. So if you want your card base to be colored, you can buy a nice heavy colored cardstock and you would apply the same measurements to those card bases. I hope you found this tutorial helpful, and if you have any questions or comments, leave them in the blog post and we will answer them as we see them. Thanks for joining us in the Crafts on the Move classroom. Have a great day.